Thank you so much, Paul, for those inspiring remarks. And I'm sure from his voice, you have figured the resilience that he has as a business leader, and that's the testament and a proof of his leadership around the world. So thank you, Paul, for your leadership and inspiration and your voice and your commitment to never give up on the solutions. So I want to keep going because I see the room is full. Some people are standing at the back, which is great. But if you'd like to sit, there are some spots here on my right. So please welcome yourselves to the tables here. Quick poll, because the next keynote panel is going to start within a minute. But before that, we want to ask you a very quick question. Will companies and countries meet their net zero targets? Agree or disagree? Couldn't get simpler than that, right? Your time starts now. You have 60 seconds to scan the QR code and answer the question. Amazing. We see the live results already. This is politics in action. Wow, this is like a match going on. The believers and the non-believers. Not the reds and blue in US snake. We will not get into that conversation. Okay, 10 seconds. Thank you for those who have already polled. All right, so I'm the one to manage time for you so that you can go back home on a Friday evening by 4:30 p.m., if not 4. So let me now welcome on stage to delve deeper into this topic, the Group Chief Executive Officer of FairPrice Group. Welcome on stage, Vipul Chawla.
Morning, everyone. Absolute pleasure to be here. I just am really inspired by the work that all of you are doing. So before I start my comments, a quick shout out to WWF, Vivek and team for your great leadership, to Manuel for your very inspiring conversations yesterday and today. Of course, Paul, I'm a bit nervous actually. Paul was our CEO in Unilever for the longest time. I've made a few botched up presentations in front of him, and Paul's in the audience today. Paul, you are still as inspiring as ever. It's great to see you again, sir. So just some comments before we get into the panel. I'll talk a little bit about the company I serve on, the FairPrice Group, because I know there are many in this audience who may be from other parts of the world. 52 years ago, through the concept of tripartism, where the government wanted law and order, wanted progress, the labor movement wanted jobs, and of course enterprise needed to serve customers in some shape or form. This whole experiment came together to create a few enterprises. And that what was then called NTUC Welcome has now become the FairPrice Group, which started as a brick and mortar supermarket chain, but with this higher purpose of really putting daily essentials on your table, in your kitchen and at home for you. These daily essentials needed to be available, needed to be affordable. And the first of these stores, as you can see in this photo, was actually opened by the then Prime Minister, our founding father, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew. And he was very clear in his commentary and his direction and in the marching orders to the team then, and over the last 50 years to the various predecessors I've had, including to us, which is really our role is to serve society in a manner such that daily essentials are available and they're affordable. And yet, the guidance to the management team is to be as hard-nosed as you need to be to make sure that you make that really work. We're a child of the labor movement. We're also a child of this very unique tripartite experiment, which I'm very pleased to say still continues in its current shape and form. But where are we today? When we talk about our own vision, and our vision is to be the most admired retailer in Asia, but our golden circle, which talks about our why, our how, and our what. Our why is to make every day a little better for our employees, for our customers, for the communities that we serve. We also know that when we look after our people, our people will look after our customers, and the business will take care of itself. So every day made a little better. That's what we strive for. That's our why. How we serve is to keep daily essentials within reach. Make it available, make it affordable. The shelves must never go out of stock. Whatever happens, it should be affordable. We track this every week. We track our key value items every week to make sure that our pricing at minimum 95% of our times is the best in the country. Available and affordable. So it's a tough goal we set for ourselves. And what we do is make it easy. Easy on the wallet, so that our customers can get what they need. Easy on the experience, because customers are time pressed. And while we do all of this, we want to go easy on the planet, because we know the decisions that we take will impact not just today, but also tomorrow. So that, in a nutshell, is our golden circle, is our strategy and our vision for the future. We have made clear commitments to be net zero, and we have a midterm target to be 50%, to have 50% reduction by 2030. And we have very clear plans for scope 1 and 2. I'll talk a little bit about that a little later. For packaging, many areas. I'm not going to delve into that right now, but there's a whole bunch of very specific and clear plans that we have called. We publish it in our annual sustainability report. We also realize that while together we can go quickly, alone we can go quickly, together we can go further. And we also know that the ecosystem that we operate in needs to be taken along, and we have to learn through our own interdependencies. So there are a few examples here on the slide which I'll talk very quickly about. One is, of course, our supplier ecosystem. The scope 3 is still a very large part of the impact that we need to work on. And in our annual supplier conferences, we talk about the more we know, the more we grow. But the sustainability agenda there is very, very central, very paramount, because we work not just with the large multinational corporations like the Unilevers of the world, but with a large number of small SMEs, as we call them in this part of the world, all of whom do not individually have the resources, but collectively we can work. We work with the UN teams, we work, whether it's sourcing electric vehicles, etc. So some examples here on how we are continuing to build an ecosystem of interdependencies so that we can move forward together. We're very pleased to have put our stake on the ground. In order for us to learn, we want to learn by doing. So we've opened our first sustainability store last year, where we put everything that we had learned into that store. So based on our own internal metrics, it was 40% more sustainable than anything that we had ever built. It was, of course, in very close partnership with WWF. So thank you so much for your support, because we know we had to learn and teach at the same time. So learning in collaboration with WWF, but also 150 teaching journeys to students and communities and others when they walk into our store, whether it is sourcing of our products, whether it is the use of recycled chopsticks from our own Lau Pasar to make the tables and the chairs. The trays and the trolleys have been sourced in a sustainable manner, 40% more sustainable than before, and so on and so forth. So a whole bunch of things, to a point where the International Grocery Federation named this as one of the most innovative stores to watch in 2025. Learning from this, we're taking this forward into the other stores that we are building as we go forward. Also, as of yesterday, our app, our online store has launched a Spot the Green, Win the Gold. For those of you in the audience who have our app, 1.6 million customers are on it, to take the opportunity so that we can continue to contribute to the planet. So those were my opening comments. I'm honored and delighted to be here. I know when I come to these panels and these events, I learn more than what I can give away. So thank you for your support.
Thank you so much, Vipul, for setting the scene. And yes, please continue to be on stage, because we need you for going deeper into the topic. So allow me to welcome on stage two more speakers and a moderator, Cindy Khoo, Managing Director, Enterprise Singapore, and my friend from Indonesia, Aditya Bayunanda, Chief Executive Officer of our Indonesia office, and it'll be moderated by Jovi Ho, Editor for the Edge Singapore. Please welcome them on stage to go deeper into the topic.
right. Okay, thank you, Vipu, for the presentation. And I hope you're hearing us on both speakers now in surround sound. Good morning, and I'm very excited to introduce our panelists for our first panel of today. And I'm Jovi, and I write for The Edge Singapore. We are a print business paper in Singapore focused on Singapore-listed companies and investing strategies for the region. Covers sustainability, sustainable finance, banks, and REITs. And now going on to our panelists joining me today, seated between Vipu and myself, Ditya Bayananda, CEO of WWF Indonesia, and Cindy Khoo, Managing Director at Enterprise Singapore. And of course, we have Vipu Chawla, Group CEO of FairPrice Group, rounding out today's panel. So we've just seen the simple poll that we've done just now, the yes or no questions. So just building off of that, you may be thinking about some firms that have stated some targets in recent years. Maybe you yourselves work for some firms that have shared these commitments to net zero. So if you ever wondered about what's required to meet these targets, the work that goes on behind the scenes, we hope to share some of your views today, and you can find out a bit more about what goes on within the companies as they achieve these goals. So I'm going to start with a question for Vipu, actually. So FairPrice is one of the most recognizable brands in Singapore. From the perspective of the consumer, how do your shoppers encounter FairPrice's sustainability initiatives? The plastic bag charge, I think, is on top of mind for many people right now. But what are some other touch points that you have? How do you educate the shoppers that visit your stores?
Thank you for that question. Yes, so there are a bunch of areas that we do which are customer-facing and a lot of work that happens behind the scenes. Let me talk about the ones that are customer-facing. So one of the things that we are working on in our own scope 1 and 2 is the refrigerant systems. I know we'll talk a little more about that later, but just changing out those refrigerators is important. Now that happens at the back end. At the front end, what we are doing is changing the way in which we are constructing the store, where the back chiller is behind the refrigerator. That's something we learned when we made our trips to Europe. European stores and retailers were doing that, Ahold Delhaize and others, where we learned from. We came back and we changed our design. So today when a customer opens a chiller to pick out an ice cream or a yogurt or a milk, in the past the storage would have been somewhere else. But today the storage is in a back chiller. So the back chiller, the front part of it is the refrigerator. Which actually makes the whole process from our back end to front end much easier and cleaner for our staff. But the product is fresher, and we save a lot of electricity, 40% saving of electricity just through that one simple process. But what it also does mean is when we design our aisles, they need to get a bit wider so that customers can open and close the door seamlessly. And if there's an aged customer who's on a wheelchair who needs help, we create a little more space for it. So it does have, I'm getting into more detail than I need to, but it does have implications on how we interact with our customers. So that's one example. The second, of course, is the electrification of our vehicles. We have today 340 odd vehicles and growing. We are moving them forward now to electric vehicles. Is something that our customers will see as they apply through our ecosystem. I talked about the Go Green initiative, which is on our app. So there is that. And of course, the example of the sustainable store of the future, where we use that not just to test our sustainability initiatives, but also use that to learn from organizations like WWF, as well as do teaching and learning journeys for communities. The other one that I talk about is a program called Imperfect Fellas, where we mark down our fruits, at the end of the day, and obviously distribute them at lower prices. But eventually, we give them to communities through the Neighborhood Share program. Now, that's an example of how we are trying to build out our own biodiversity. And the last but not the least is our partnership with the Singapore 30 by 30, where we want to make sure that local produce is delivered to customers within 24 hours. And we've been the front runners in working on that. So here are some examples of what we're doing in customer-facing manner to drive this agenda.
All right, thank you. So that point about arranging your shelves and the store design is quite interesting. Just moving on to Aditya now, I think many Singaporeans may not fully understand how supply chains and resources come together to create products like the fresh produce, the snacks, and the items that line FairPrice's shelves, for example. So looking at key Indonesian sectors like palm oil and paper, what is WWF Indonesia doing to help producers become more sustainable while remaining competitive?
Thank you for the question. And very happy to be here. I think most Singaporeans also, are consumers of pulp and paper and palm oil products. And in Indonesia, the transformation of this sector is happening even now. So just to put in perspective, both of these sectors were major deforestation drivers back in 2010 until 2020 maybe. But now you can see from the trends of deforestation, Indonesia has actually done quite well. Before, deforestation could be over 1 million hectares, but now it is now down to around 190 to 200,000. And this is because the sector has actually moved. And now we're trying to make sure that the sector is not just stopping deforestation, but moving towards net positive. How does it contribute to the enrichment of nature, to climate change, and also to increasing the biodiversity that has been lost? In this, WWF is actually working very closely with the private sector as well as with the government. One of the core activities that we do, especially in these two sectors, is to work on the sustainability frameworks. For palm oil, it is RSPO, but we also work with the government to also increase the take-in and the standards of the ISPO, or the mandatory standard for sustainable palm oil. And in pulp and paper, we are very active in encouraging and also advising technically on how the adoption of FSC in the pulp and paper sector as well. Two, we also work at a landscape level. The impacts of one company on a particular landscape may be small, but I think we've heard a lot that, together possible, and it's very real, is that how do we increase that impact within a certain landscape, making sure that the activities of restoration and conservation are really in the most important places within those landscapes. That is one of the work that we do a lot with private sector, with the government as well. We also develop traceable, transparent, traceable supply chains, because it's really important to be able to hold companies and individuals accountable. It's really important where you have to know where your supply chains are coming from, and this is one of the big challenges right now, because a lot of these, especially for palm oil, the producers are smallholders. 60% is smallholders, and that's where I think a very credible supply chain will help to actually focus on where are the areas where it is needed. And last but not least is to empowering inclusive and equitable growth. As I said again, a lot of these supply chains are smallholders. People around forests are typically more poor. And so we have to make sure that communities and indigenous people are getting benefits. There is no sustainability. There is no sustainability when people are poor, are in poverty. So it's an integral part. So this is what we do in Indonesia in our drive to try to make the sectors more sustainable. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And taking a closer look now and staying with you, Aditya, I've also read about another acronym for the sustainability sector, which is just another one to add to the soup here, FOLU, F-O-L-U. Tell us about what FOLU represents and what WWF Indonesia is doing to support this plan. Thanks.
Yeah, FOLU, we've heard a lot of acronyms today. FOLU is another one, which is forestry and other land use. For Indonesia, this is one of the biggest change to forest and land use, is one of the biggest contributor for emissions. Now, actually Singapore, back maybe the worst was in 2015, when the fires were raging. Singapore had severe haze, and that was completely coming from the change of land use and forest deforestation. The fires were on peatlands, they were on forest areas, they were on areas that were converted into agriculture and so forth. And just to put that in perspective, in 2015, it was estimated 1.6 billion tons of CO2 was emitted in just a few months, which is about the same, maybe roughly with the same with what Japan does in a year. So the impact of FOLU is not just in Indonesia, but I want to tell you that the progress that has been made since then has been a lot. I think in Singapore you're also feeling it. There's less haze, and even if there is haze, it's not too long, because the government has really cracked down on fire. And also I have to say that companies way back in 2014, 15, 16, they've all made these zero deforestation commitments. And you can see that in the WRI released a report not too long ago, recently, where unfortunately, deforestation of tropical forests in 2024 actually increased compared to 2023. So 2023 was around 3 million, 3.4 million, but actually in 2024 it jumped to nearly 6 million. And thankfully, in that scenario, Indonesia was contributing around 240,000, so which is small compared to the tropical forest loss in the world. So I think their change is possible, because at one point Indonesia was one of the main contributors to deforestation. But now recently change is possible, and I think in no small part is because the private sector really kind of gamed up. They saw that this is not good business. They know that being in such deforestation landscape is definitely not doing anything for their reputation. And the long game, of course, is that you need nature to make sure that your supply chains are sustainable. Otherwise, there's no water, there's no security, people are not happy, and so forth. And so in this context of FOLU, WWF is actually doing a lot of things to try to support this government initiative, which is by 2030, the Indonesian forest will be a net sink. It will no longer be, in the context of the change of the land use, a source of emissions. And in this, we are supporting also ourselves. We're doing restoration work in Bukit 30 in Sebago National Park, thousands of hectares of peatlands. We are helping to transform the practices of the sector, the palm oil and pulp and paper. We are also looking at how we can contribute to improving the governance of new models with carbon, with biodiversity, making sure that there is safeguards for communities and a fair share. And we are also working to try to promote sustainable finance to fund these conservation efforts. I think it was presented here as well as TFFF. That's one of the areas where we are a big supporter of that intake to the government. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I just realized 2015 was a decade ago that we're going to just mention. So just staying on the national front now, Cindy, we come to you and your team's work at Enterprise Singapore in view of, I think, recent economic and geopolitical developments. How should organizations view sustainability now? And the net zero commitments today, in your interactions with the business leaders, is this still a priority, in your opinion? Yeah.
Thanks, Jovi. Actually, I found the results of the poll just now quite depressing. And I feel that, do I have to be the, I mean, there's a 1/5 of the room here that seems to still be an optimist like me, and maybe that's an all right balance, because maybe it's the pessimist who will drive for fast action. But I think there's room for optimism. First of all, I would say that climate change, when we think about net zero targets, personally, I don't think it's about a timeline, but really the science is inevitable. The progression towards sort of climate impaired world, I mean, we're sensing that progression every day, right? Extreme weather events, they are not even like 10 years in the future, we're experiencing it day by day. In certain places in the world, there are droughts, there are risks of hurricanes, flooding, and things like that. So it's actually quite already upon us. It's really to the extent, right, and the timeline that we are thinking about. So one thing that is very clear is that a very senior leader in government recently said, if today there's anyone who's still a denialist to climate change, you must be living under a rock or covering your eyes, covering your ears, even covering your nose to totally not be sensing what's going on. So now the question is, if the science is inevitable, then how do you respond to it? And that's why I think there's room to be optimistic. Because actually there are plenty of parties in this world who are proactive in wanting to do something about it. Putting aside the fluctuations in government policies here and there, the dynamics coming out of Trump administration or even the EU's omnibus legislation, the corporates are moving, the banks are moving, large companies like FedPrice are moving. So I think there's room to build an alliance across for companies to really start taking action and being proactive. And why do we need to be proactive? Proactive gives us optionality. When you're able to plan ahead, you know what you would prefer to do rather than to be forced to do something. Generally, that just makes good business sense, right? That you can choose a course of action that's more aligned to your business interests than to be forced into a course of action that maybe is not in your business interest. So I think one key message I really want to send out, not just today, but really we've been quite consistent in doing this in Singapore and in Enterprise Singapore, is to send out the message that the worlds that Vivek talked about in the opening, the different worlds, there's a climate world, nature world, and the business world, they can come together, and they ought to come together. The business case for taking climate action is there. In Singapore particularly, I'll just make one quick remark about this. Energy costs. If you take action to reduce your energy costs, oh yes, it helps reduce the impact on the climate, but it saves you money. The cost of having electricity in Singapore can only be going up, and clearly that's a major sort of cost item in anyone's balance sheet. So why would you not start taking action to improve your energy efficiency, for example? And there are many more examples, depending on the sector, depending on your business model. There are things that are aligned to climate action that will also make business sense, and then we also have many companies that are already taking action in that line, and we want to encourage that and to milk that momentum. Of course, there are still many companies that feel very hesitant, they don't know how to go about doing it, and we appreciate that. The Singapore government, as you know, we have been very proactive in sending out a lot of support schemes, a lot of programs, courses, playbooks, and we work with a lot of partners to sort of roll out these programs as well. So the support is there whenever companies are ready to start taking action, ranging all the way from even just measuring their impact to making plans to taking action. It can be overwhelming, so if there's only one thing that I would ask everyone to take away is that we have also just launched a portal that brings together all these resources, all this information about how to get started, how to take action on a website called SME Sustainability Portal Hub. If you Google it, it should come up. We paid for that publicity. But if you will just type in the URL is smesustainability.gov.sg. Please encourage everyone to check it out. Once you go into it, you will see where all the different range of support is already there, and we're partners standing ready to journey with you on this. Thanks.
All right, thank you for that, and thanks for the plug for the URL as well. Yeah, so just looking at actually Q&A, you have a QR code on the screen right now. Please do send in your questions. We do have time for Q&A later on. And I do see a very interesting question that just appeared here actually on the iPad. I'm just going to read it out, and actually it's just open for all members of our panel today. What do you think about the deceleration or / the pullbacks on sustainability efforts after the Trump administration took office in January this year? Maybe just add on this question, do you think this is permanent? Do you think this will be rolled back in 3 years' time? What are the panelists' thoughts on this and how it impacts today's environment? Would anyone like to go first? Cindy, maybe?
I feel I have to say something, since I'm the one who raised Trump in the first place. It's hard to say. It's hard to say how much of it will be permanent, but I do think sometimes we need to separate the noise from something that's structural. So what might be structural, actually, we have to think about where the money is, I suppose. Right now, of course, there's lots of money still in oil and gas, for example. So you can see Trump sort of rolling back support for renewables in order to continue to encourage oil and gas production where they can make money, for sure. But you can see there are also other regions in the world where renewables are already very competitive, and they continue to grow, they continue to invest. So on a global level, I would say renewables will still be there. The investment technologies for decarbonization will still be there. Then it's really a matter of the distribution of the solutions, the distribution of where the investment is going, and the opportunities are still available for those who would like to seize them. Whether things will go away after 3 years, I'm not absolutely sure, but as a large country, I would say US continues to take a leadership position in terms of what it does with climate action, and it's not just the government, but the corporates, right? The large MNCs that have operations all around the world, they have incredible influence in terms of what they do. So another thing to look out for might be what they are doing, and from the few that I've interacted with, actually a lot of them remain very committed to climate action. So I think there's still room for optimism.
Yeah, let me just add to that. You know, when we look at our own agenda, we have very clear plans for changing out our refrigerant systems, which is 46% of our scope 1, 2, electrification of our vehicles, which is about 6%, and the balance 48% is moving from brown to green energy. A political agenda in another country doesn't impact any of that, to be honest with you. Now, if I talk about very specifically moving to green vehicles, we've looked at the US, EVs and the Chinese EVs and so on. And regardless of any agenda, we are concluding that one is better than the other, and we're moving ahead with that, to be honest with you. So I don't think that is impacting us. Secondly, I think these political agendas will come and go, but the climate change and the planet that we live in will stay. And we're looking at these plans over the next 10, 15, 20 years. So I don't think a 1 or 2 year, even if it's a minor headwind, impacts us. From a Fair Price Group standpoint, we see no impact of that in our plans or in our conviction.
Yeah. I see that the science in the end will help prove in the context of climate change. I also have optimism from what we see, because we did a survey not too long ago about the youth, specifically youth. This was a survey for 17 until, 35? And overwhelmingly, they were very aware in the context of climate change. So I do have this optimism that even, going forward, this issue will have a solution, and the youth will rightly as our responsibility actually for this. But so I feel that this is a disruption, but in the long run, I think the science and the movement within the younger generation will prevail.
All right, thank you. I do have one question here while we wait for more questions coming from the audience. For Vipul, actually, we hear a lot of words of encouragement today about why companies should start on a net zero journey. But from where you've been, from what you've done so far, what are some challenges that you faced? What are some things that make you think, wow, this is a lot of work? This is a lot more than we thought we would face when we started in the beginning. So what are some of these headwinds or obstacles that you think companies can keep in mind before they start? Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Look, in some ways we are learning, and a few years ago when we started this agenda, we first wanted to get into a bit of a learning journey, but we very quickly put a stake on the ground. Using this entire thing about, think big, start small, act fast. We appointed our Chief Sustainability Officer who's here. We got a team together. We appointed a board subcommittee to guide us on these matters. So there were some internal administrative things that we did. But we very quickly got moving on assessing what is the scope of the emissions that we produce. And it took us a couple of years to understand that, because even in the methods of calculating were not entirely clear to us, but we are better now than we were. So that was one early challenge. Specifically talking about the 3 areas of scope 1 and 2, I referred to, I think when it came to electrification of vehicles, we're finding it easier to find vans, but larger to find 24-ton trucks which are electric. So can we solve that challenge? Yes, but that's something. And of course, in Singapore, there's this wonderful thing called COE. So we got 400 odd vehicles. We're going to wait for the COE to transition. Otherwise, we're going to write off millions of dollars. So we sort of balance some of that, but I think we're okay there. The second is on refrigeration. We're moving from 442 to 704. And that really is about every time we have a capex on a store, we move to that system, including with back chillers and so on. But is that a challenge? No, it's more like a network agenda that we're going forward with. The one which is a little harder is access to green energy, which is more a national agenda kind of thing. And we know we can't do it alone. We've got to go as a consortium or as a larger group. And so we are working with consortiums to see how we move that forward. I'm actually cautiously optimistic based on the current solutions I have on my table. We're about to actually sign something to secure that for a few years out. But if there was one thing where I think we have to move collectively, and I'm now talking to not just those in the audience who are from Singapore, but also from the region, this availability of brown to green energy is not something that individual corporations can, because we're receivers, but we have to move as a consortium, as a group, and there may be some wider investments that are needed collectively. We are willing to place some bets, but we still need to do this together. So there are some challenges there, but nothing that we can't solve.
All right, thank you. I'm mindful of time, so I just have one last question for all members of the panel today. It's something I ask all the sustainability experts when I interview them as well. So what is one behavior or thinking in the industry that you would change that will make your work in sustainability a lot easier? What will make a job a lot easier right now? Yeah.
Go first.
I'll go first because I already said this in my openings of 2 minutes, which is that really sustainability is good business. If really we could shift that paradigm for a lot of business owners, that would really make a lot of the efforts that we have in promoting sustainability efforts a lot easier. Thanks.
I'm going to refer to the lunch meeting we had yesterday where I asked this question of Paul, and he referred to it today too. If there was ever a time for conviction and courage on this matter, that time is now. And I interpret that as leadership with conscience. There will be headwinds, and those headwinds will come and go. There'll be challenges, but just if we had the courage and the conviction, but lead with the moral conscience in whatever sphere we can impact and serve our communities, I think that's going to be really helpful for all of us together. And sometimes we will feel a bit disheartened, sometimes we'll feel a bit nervous. That's when interdependencies and working together will probably, if nothing else, give us confidence and know-how.
Yeah, I think I want to make sure that the realization that between conservation and business and production and development, there is no paradox. It both needs each other. There is no good business, there is no sustainability without nature. And I think it needs to be realized that adopting these things is actually future-proofing the business, the private sector, making it more resilient in the sense that while nature needs this, because we saw from the first two speakers that biodiversity is coming down, climate change is happening, extreme weather and so forth. And this will affect the business, your business. And that's why I think it's very important that that sustainability is not just seen as a separate division, but is actually embraced as part of the production, as part of the business process. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you to our panel today. We've covered quite a bit of ground, and there will be an article on theedgesingapore.com soon recapping all of today's panels. So thank you to Vipul, Cindy, and Aditya for sharing your perspectives and kicking off today's panels. I'm Jovi, and it's been a pleasure moderating this panel. Please join me in thanking our panelists this morning.
Thank you so much, Jovi, for moderating that very active discussion, and thank you everyone for sending your questions. Please continue to do so through the Q&A QR code. If I could ask the speakers to just receive some of our small tokens of appreciation, probably on the other side of the stage. So we want to warm you up for the rest of the day, but be rest assured that Paul is going nowhere till he comes back after lunch again for a fireside chat. So any of you who are wondering, is Paul going to be around? Yes, but for that you need to be the last one sitting here, if that was enough motivation for you. So we want to share more about nature-based solutions. So can I have the team define nature-based solution in a very interactive manner in a minute? So we'll watch what is nature positive, what we can do about it, and after that we'll go for a roundtable discussion, and I'll give you the instructions after the video. Wow, I got goosebumps. I don't know about you, but that's why I joined WWF, and that's the fact. And we are part of the solution, and we want to be. So now it's over to you for a quick roundtable discussion. We would like the table host to moderate the discussion, but come on, we are all adults. Please introduce yourselves quickly, what brings you to this summit, and the key insights that stood out for you for the session that you just had and the opening speeches. And you have about 5 to 7 minutes to do that. Your time starts now. Quick introductions. What did you think of the session so far? And rest room breaks can be taken, but just do it discreetly, quietly if you must. So table host, can I please ask you to just moderate the discussion, but it's free-flowing for the next 7 minutes. Thank you.